Hello and welcome to another Kangaroo English Daily Digest podcast. My name is Christian and today is Thursday, the best day of the week. Today I am going to be talking about vocabulary, specifically the science of learning vocabulary. And the main reason I want to talk about it is because in my interview yesterday with Scott Thornbury, the ELT teacher and teacher trainer, he suggested that, in his opinion, the most important thing for learners to focus on is vocabulary. And so I wanted to explain a little bit about how humans learn vocabulary to try and help you in your goals. So I actually want to start by giving you a vocabulary test. So what I want to do is I want to give you a list of 6 words. So for example, bed, rocket, medal, dog, teacher, magician. Let me just repeat that. So bed, rocket, medal, dog, teacher, and magician. So I'm going to give you a list of 6 words just like that, and I want you to memorize them. Okay, so that list was just a test, just an example. So I don't want you to remember that. I want you to forget those words. And now I'm going to give you the real words. Ready? Belt, decade, candle, favor, newspaper, massage. Let me repeat that. Belt, decade, candle, favor, newspaper, and massage. Okay, good. Now, hopefully you have those words memorized, and very shortly I will test your memory. But first, I want to talk about an experience that most people have in their life. Some people have it every single day. And it's not just bilingual people or trilingual people who have this, it's monolingual people as well. And it's called tip of the tongue. It's basically where you're trying to remember this word, but it just won't come out. It's not that you don't remember the word at all. You probably remember some specific things about it. You might remember how it sounds. You might remember how long it is. You might remember how it's similar to other words. That maybe sounds similar to another word. And that really frustrating experience is called tip of the tongue. And episode 1 of this podcast was actually entirely about this phenomenon. But I'm talking about tip of the tongue because of what it teaches us about something called the age of acquisition effect. But first, I want to talk about how you, as an adult, learns vocabulary, because obviously English is not your first language. If you're listening to this podcast, probably not. So let's imagine that I show you a pack of tissues and you're Spanish, and so you know that in Spanish tissues are pañuelos. So you have in your mind, you have the symbol of a tissue and you have that phonetic sound, pañuelos. And so that phonetic sound and that symbol, they are connected in your brain. But now imagine you want to learn the English word for pañuelo, which is tissue. Okay, so you have this word tissue. Now, obviously what you want to do is connect the sound tissue, that word tissue, you want to connect it directly to the symbol in your brain. But that's not actually what happens. What happens is, first you connect the word tissue to that phonetic sound that you already know, which is pañuelo, and then from pañuelo it gets connected to the symbol. So you have all of this interference. You don't have a direct connection between this new word that you've learnt in English and the concept. That comes with time and practice. With time and practice, you can connect directly the sound and the symbol. But this interference can also happen as you get older, and that's why I'm talking about tip of the tongue and age of acquisition. So there's some research here. I have this paper. It's First Learned Words Are Not Forgotten. Age of Acquisition Effects in the Tip of the Tongue Experience. So basically the research shows us that the words that you learn when you are younger, so from when you're a baby until you're 6 or 7 years old, those words are the words that you are going to remember much easier and faster than all of the words that you remember as an adult. So age of acquisition is really important. And tip of the tongue experiences are most common with words that you learn later in life, words that you learn as an adult. And so now it's time to go back and test your memory. So let's see how many of those words that you can remember off that list that I gave you. Okay, so 6 words. So they are belt, decade, candle, favor, newspaper, and massage. All very common words. How many of them did you remember? And now for the exciting part, for the experimental part. Even though I told you to forget those words on the first list, how many of those can you remember? Bed, rocket, medal, dog, teacher, and magician. Again, they're all very high-frequency words, but they're not the words I wanted you to remember. But this science tells us that you probably remember more words from the first list than the second list, even though I told you to forget them. And the reason is because the words on the first list you learned earlier in life. You learned about beds and dogs and teachers and magicians. And then when you're an adult, you learned about newspapers and massages. And so it tells us that age of acquisition is really important. Now, I also have this paper here, which is Age of Acquisition of 299 Words in 7 Languages: American English, Czech, Gaelic, Lebanese, Arabic, Malay, Persian, and Western Armenian. And they discovered that the order of the words that we learn as children is pretty much universal. So no matter what language you speak, your first words are the same as the first words of a child in a completely another country. So if you're in Western Armenia, you know about dogs and rockets before you know about before you know about candles and belts, just the same as a child in Lebanon. Now, what does all this mean for you as a second language learner who's trying to connect words directly to symbols in your mind so you can have fluency? Well, what it means is that you're probably going to find it much easier to learn words that you learned when you were younger. So words that you learned as a child are going to be easier for you to learn now as an adult in English, because they already have that deep connection in the brain. But there is a second part to the problem, which is that the frequency of words that you find in the world is not necessarily related to age of acquisition. So for example, when you're a child, you talk a lot about rockets and teddy bears and maybe going to bed and prams and things like that, which you don't talk about as an adult. but those words are much easier to remember. So what it means is that as an adult learner, you should really be focused on words that are actually difficult and not common, because those common words are going to come easier to you anyway. What you should be focused on is words that enable you to speak about the things that you're interested in, words that are related to your hobbies or your work or anything that sparks joy in you. Focus on that advanced vocabulary and focus less on common words and words that you might find in children's books or beginner's level textbooks, because they're going to be automatically easier for you to remember because of this incredible age of acquisition effect. And so next time you're trying to ransack your mind to remember a word, and this is today's word of the day, ransack. R-A-N-S-A-C-K, ransack. It comes to us from Old Norse, from the Vikings. Ran meant house, and sack meant seek, to search, to look for. So to ransack was to look for something inside a house, especially something illegal. So imagine the Viking police come into your house looking for something. Well, they make a bit of a mess. They open all the drawers, they turn your bed over, they throw all your magazines on the floor. They ransack your house. And so to ransack is to search for something in a kind of disorganized and messy way. And so next time you're ransacking your mind for that word that's just sitting on the tip of your tongue, it could be a reminder that you need to focus more on that serious adult vocabulary than rockets and magicians and teachers. I hope you enjoyed today's Daily Digest. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so by following the links on my website at kangarooenglish.com. I'm Christian, this is Kangaroo English, and I'll see you in class. It's time to stop studying.